Hello, and welcome to Catholicism in the Car. My name is Parker Zerbal. Okay, so talking about this, how we got to this how we got to this hyper-contraceptive view in our society, and also how we can defend the anti-contraceptive view. So, as we were saying, these things have their roots in a deviance from a realist metaphysics. Once you deviate from realism, which is, well, I've defined that enough, I think. Once you deviate from realism, you easily get to a point where it seems that the actions of man are subjective. They are, if there is a theistic component, that component would only be relevant in that it creates law for which man needs to obey, and that is the only reason for morality, kind of a divine command theory, you could say, which makes it impossible to create arguments like I am attempting to construct. From a divine command theory position, you would not be able to argue against contraception purely from nature. Or at least they would see that as mostly unimportant, because what matters is that God commands, and that creates truth. So we got on this whole tangent of realism, nominalism, the roots here, because of the premise of the anti-contraception view being natural, not in the sense of biological nature, but in the sense of metaphysical nature. Okay, so this is how we got here. We were talking about metaphysical nature, and really this is not going to make sense unless one comes from a realist perspective. That's why I harp on this all the time, that it is so incredibly important for people to get back to a realist philosophy, a realist metaphysics, because without it, it's like the rug has been torn from under you. If you're trying to defend a Christian worldview from a nominalistic standpoint, if you're trying to defend the Christian worldview from a nominalistic standpoint, it's going to be an impossible task. So you start with this problem of contraception. You start with the fact that man has a nature. Man has a nature. And that this nature is common to all of mankind. Now really, you cannot be a Christian and disagree with this. You cannot be at least a Chalcedonian Christian and believe in these things, because we define our theology out of this realist perspective, in the sense that natures are real. We cannot define Jesus Christ as being holy God and holy man without the concept of metaphysical nature, which is rooted in metaphysical realism. So if man has a nature, a common nature, then man is only most morally perfected, you could say. Man is only morally perfected in fulfilling that nature. Now the question would be, first off, is moral perfection possible? Second, what would that moral perfection or that perfection of nature look like? What is the perfection of human nature? What is that perfection? And I think we can get hints of this from even a non-theistic standpoint. For example, looking at man's body, he stands erect. He stands straight up. He stands tall. He does not stand on 4 feet as do the beasts, and where the beasts primarily, are oriented towards the earth by their stature. Man, by his stature, his erect stature, is oriented towards the heavens. Man is oriented outside of himself by the positioning of his face. He has eyes in the front of his head, not on the sides, to indicate concentration, to indicate a going out towards the other. Man has hands through which he can grasp things, and he can create. There are certain biologists of today's world that have posited that man's hands, the fact that he has this ability to grasp things in such a precise way, is, from a physical standpoint, his most defining feature. So man stands erect. His eyes point him outward. His hands are able to grasp things and create. In these ways, man not only images his creator, but these things image man's nature. By nature, man is meant to look outward from himself. By nature, man is meant to stand erect in his morals, up towards the heavens, up towards that which is even greater than himself. Man is meant to look outside of himself in that way. And man is meant to, in a certain sense, attain that which is outside of himself. And not just attain it for his own selfish pleasure, but to attain it so that he may mold it into a new creation. And this shows that all these things are meant to happen to man individually as well. Man is meant to look towards the heavens and look outside of himself towards his fellow man. Man is meant to stand erect in that way and look outside of himself in that way. Man is meant to grasp those things that are higher than him and mold them so that he himself may be made into a new creation. So how does this all relate to contraception? So let's take these few principles we found about human nature. That man is meant to look outside of himself. He is meant to grasp things. She is meant to create. He is meant to stand erect, not facing the ground. In his sexual posture, males stand erect in order to give of themselves outside of themselves, looking towards the other, giving towards the other, grasping, trying to attain the other in a certain sense. Don't think of these things in not like grasping against the other's will, but holding tight, holding close. It's a grasping, holding close, and then unto a new creation. All these things unto a new creation, which is a child. Which is a child. And this tells us something about males in particular, that they are meant to fulfill their nature. And this is imaged in what they do sexually, occupationally, and they all have these principles. That man is meant to look outside of himself. He is meant to acquire, to hold close, cherish that which he seeks and that which he finds. And then he is meant to create, to make a new creation out of that which he finds. Woman, by her bodily composition, and this is also especially shown in her sexual composition, that woman is meant to be receptive. And then in that reception, she is meant to nurture, to build in a loving, close, internal sense, just like the building of a fetus in the baby in the womb. She is meant to then bear forth this new creation. And although it may be an agony, as Christians we believe it was not so from the beginning. Birth, labor, birth was not meant to be laborious. Birth was meant to be not laborious, but glorious. And it still retains its glory through the pain, but it was meant to be glorious and unpainful. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. So man, by his very nature, both man and woman, we find things about their natures, and about common human nature, via their bodies, via the orientation of their bodies. Okay? So we see all these things about man's nature, that he is meant to cherish. Both the man and the woman are meant to cherish. They're meant to build. They're meant to create. And so in a contraceptive sexual act, not only is the physical end of the sexual act being frustrated, being stopped, but the very core of man's nature is being cut short. It's being cut off before it can fully be realized. So in a contraceptive act, the two parties can cherish one another. They can give to one another. But that gift is not unto a new creation. And so therefore it is less than what man's nature is calling it to. It is an eclipse of man's nature. I think that pretty well gives this argument as I am able to flesh it out. I think this is something that I can chew on, we can all chew on and meditate upon. I definitely need to meditate upon them. Pray for me as I pray for you, that we might change our culture for the sake of Christ and the glory of the Immaculate. In the name of the Father and the Holy Spirit.